Where have I been? Where have you been? Anyway, let's do a thing.
This is macOS Ken.
Wall Street weighs in ahead of Apple earnings. Apple Vision Pro creates dollars for startups, and OS updates abound. It is Monday, the 31st of July, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from macOS Ken. Brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code macOSKen50 at factormeals.com/macOSKen50 for 50% off. This show is also sponsored by BetterHelp, online therapy. Whether you're dealing with decisions around career, relationships, any of the big life stuff, therapy can help you along the way so you can get moving rather than getting stuck or staying stuck. Talking to a therapist isn't asking somebody else to fix it for you, whatever it is. No, talking to a therapist is the insight to know that we can all use help along the way. I worked with my last BetterHelp therapist on an anger issue over a particular thing that happened. I have a family member with relationship issues who is currently working with BetterHelp. Since the whole BetterHelp thing happens online, you don't have to worry about finding and going to a therapist. Just fill out a questionnaire and BetterHelp will work to find a licensed therapist who's right for you. And if they end up not being a great match, you can switch therapists anytime at no additional charge. If you know you need to get moving, but just don't know how, let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/macOSKen today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/macOSKen. BetterHelp.com/macOSKen. Notes and news ahead of Apple's third quarter fiscal year 2023 earnings call, which is coming up this Thursday. We'll start with a weird move last Wednesday from Bernstein Research. A post from TipRanks had that firm maintaining a hold rating on Apple shares, but with a price target of $195. That was up from the previous target of $175, according to Apple 3.0. Somewhat interestingly, the move was made not by Bernstein's usual Apple analyst, Tony Sacconaghi. Rather, Bernstein tech sector analyst Mark Lee made the move. TipRanks says he follows such companies as Micron, United Micro, and Apple. Whatever's going on there, the move has a sort of catching up to the present feel. At $175, Bernstein's rating was $20 deep underwater. The day before Lee moved the target to $195, Apple shares closed at $194.50. They start trading today at $195.83. Services are big. There are new Macs out there. Apple's got a spatial computing device on the way. While the company has a lot working in its favor, iPhone will no doubt be a significant part of the earnings call. Here in the States, sales may look like something of a mixed bag. Counterpoint research hit with numbers late last week that indicate a 24% decline in U.S. smartphone shipments for last quarter versus the same quarter a year earlier. While the firm tracked iPhone shipments as falling 6% year-on-year, the robot army fared worse. Android smartphone shipments dropped 38% in the States, according to Counterpoint's count. iPhone shipments dropped. Android shipments dropped more. That led to Apple getting a bigger piece of a shrinking pie. Quoted in the Counterpoint release, Associate Research Director Hanish Bhatia said, despite fewer shipments for Apple compared to the same quarter last year, the brand's share of shipments was still up 10% year-on-year at 55%, according to the firm. Apple's resilience was driven by strong promotions across postpaid and prepaid. Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile continue to offer $800 plus promo credits for the iPhone 14, while old generation iPhones were also steeply discounted across prepaid. For what it's worth, Counterpoint seems to see such promotional activity continuing for all phone makers for the foreseeable future. While sales in the States may have lacked luster, Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives thinks iPhone sales in China for the June quarter were shiny, maybe enough to add sparkle to iPhone sales as a whole. Apple Insider highlighted a note he wrote over the weekend. According to the piece, the Wedbush analysts believe that iPhone units, based on a clear uptick in demand in China for the quarter, could show some upside despite the choppy macro. That is thought to be due to higher average selling points and overall upgrade activity for the iPhone 14 Pro. Wedbush has an outperform rating on Apple shares. Mr. Ives has a 12-month price target on the shares of $220. In a move that is almost as confusing as Bernstein's, one firm has maintained its neutral rating on Apple shares while upping its price target well into the 200s. A couple of weeks back, Barron's had BofA global research analyst Wamsi Mohan weighing in with expectations for both the June and the September quarter. Going chronologically, June's going to be fine, mostly in line with street estimates in his estimation. The piece had him looking for revenue of $80.7 billion for the June quarter on earnings per share of $1.17. That undershoots the street's forecast of $81.8 billion on earnings per share of $1.19. As for the current quarter, he sees disappointment on the way. According to Barron's, Mohan's channel checks find that the launch of the iPhone 15 could be delayed by a few weeks, pushing the debut of the next generation iPhone into the December quarter. That, plus a tough compare for Macs, have him calling for September quarter revenue of $87.1 billion, $4.5 billion less than the street's consensus. It may be worth noting, as a piece from 9 to 5 Mac did, that Mohan was right about iPhone 12 issues leading to delay. Then again, Mohan's iPhone 12 prediction hit in March of 2020, coinciding with the onset of the pandemic. The tic-tac-toe playing chicken at the county fair could have probably called that one. Coming back to today, though, Barron says given the likely timing of the new iPhone launch and tougher comparisons for the Mac, Mohan sees potential for further product revenue declines in the September quarter. Well, that just leaves one thing to do, it seems. Maintain a neutral rating on Apple shares and raise your price target on them. Anyway, that's what Mohan did, moving BofA's target from $190 to $210. While BofA expresses concern over the next quarter, Goldman Sachs seems to be taking a broader view and is pleased by it. Apple Insider had that firm issuing a note last week expressing a continued belief that Apple's growing iPhone installed base serves as the foundation for growing monetization per user. Accordingly, says the firm, we view Apple as a long-term earnings and free cash flow compounder with strong visibility into that growth that supports a premium valuation. That said, there may be a few bumps in the road ahead, starting with a bump in prices. Rumors have prices at the Pro end of the iPhone 15 line rising by $100 to $200. That could slow some sales in #ThisEconomy. They've also heard rumors that production issues may result in a delayed launch or limited availability at the time of release. Overall, though, Apple Insider says Goldman Sachs describes the forthcoming iPhone 15 launch as promising. Goldman Sachs has a buy rating on Apple shares. The firm's price target on the shares is $220. Expecting lots of good guidance for Apple's fourth quarter is Morgan Stanley analyst Eric Woodring. Apple 3.0 ran part of a note he wrote last week. Quoting part of that, We expect Apple to post an inline June quarter, but guide September quarter revenue and gross margin materially higher than current consensus estimates, reflecting stable iPhone builds, seasonal Mac strength, low teens services growth, and continued secular and cyclical margin tailwinds. That is likely to lead to a lot of positive estimate revisions in his estimation, followed by a great month for Apple shares. Quoting the analyst again, history shows that this kind of setup drives the greatest outperformance in Apple stock in the day, week, and month post-earnings, with Apple outperforming the S&P 500 by 10 points on average in the month after raising September quarter guidance over the last decade. Morgan Stanley has an overweight rating on Apple shares. Woodring's price target on the shares is $220. While Apple designs stuff and has stuff made, Apple doesn't make a lot of things itself. That could mean money to be made upstream from Apple, as well as in categories in which it competes. A piece from the Financial Times, an excerpt of which turned up on Apple 3.0, makes that case, saying the WWDC announcement of Apple Vision Pro has ignited or reignited investments in mixed reality. According to the report, AR and VR startups saw funding dry up, not due to #ThisEconomy, but because investors were totes focused on artificial intelligence. Then, Apple showed its very spatial head-mounted computer, and guess what that did? Post-reveal, the report says AR, VR, and mixed reality startups in the U.S. in June raised $208 million, nearly as much in 1 month as in the previous 3 combined, according to data from PitchBook. One exec in the AR funding space says Apple Vision Pro was the proof the market needed that mixed reality is not a fad. He says he's been getting a lot more calls from investors seeking opportunities, with several of his portfolio companies able to accelerate their fundraising process. More news in a moment, but first a word from Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit and sponsor of today's show. I don't know about where you are or where you've been or where you are again, but man alive, everywhere I went last week, it was HOT hot. Far too hot to be spending time in the kitchen. If you feel that way too, why don't you give Factor a try? I have loved the Factor meals I've had. Fantastic proteins, fantastic sauces, fantastic sides, and all ready in a snap. Just 10 minutes in the oven or 2 minutes in the microwave if it's too hot for the oven, and you are fueling up fast. Here's the thing though, speed and convenience don't trump quality and nutrition. From Calorie Smart to Keto to Protein Plus to Vegan Plus Veggie, Factor's meals are prepared by chefs, approved by dietitians, and delivered to your door, ready for the microwave. Their meals are fresh, never frozen. That's how Factor is ready so fast while tasting so fantastic. See what Factor has for you. Head to factormeals.com/macOSKen50 and use code macOSKen50 to get 50% off. That's code macOSKen50 at factormeals.com/macOSKen50 to get 50% off. Taste what has made Factor America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code macOSKen50 for 50% off at factormeals.com/macOSKen50. One of the last rounds, possibly the last round of updates ahead of iOS 17 and its ilk, hit while I was away. Here's hoping you updated. On Monday, the 24th of July, a few pieces from Mac Rumors said Apple had released iOS and iPadOS 16.6, macOS Ventura 13.5, watchOS 9.6, and tvOS 16.6. Each brought a long list of security fixes, and in each, notes on Apple's security updates page said the company was aware of reports that two, a kernel vulnerability and a WebKit vulnerability, may have been actively exploited. Those vulnerabilities/exploits may have gone back a ways, and so did the fixes. Another piece from Mac Rumors said Apple also released iOS and iPadOS 15.7.8, macOS Monterey 12.6.8, and macOS Big Sur 11.7.9 for devices that are not able to run the current release versions of the Mac, iPhone, and iPad software. Those updates contain the same security improvements. Just a day after the once and current OS updates, Apple pressed ahead on the future. On Tuesday, the 25th of July, a few pieces from Mac Rumors heralded the fourth developer betas of iOS and iPadOS 17, macOS 14 Sonoma, watchOS 10, and tvOS 17. And finally today, along with the new developer betas of operating systems with which we are all familiar, a developer beta for Apple's first new operating system since the mid-2010s. On the same Tuesday as the iOS 17 developer beta, a piece from Mac Rumors says Apple released the second beta of visionOS, the system set to power Apple Vision Pro. While there are no Apple headsets out yet for testing, that should change soon. According to the same Mac Rumors piece, the Cupertino company started taking applications for developer kits 1 week ago today. It's a fine line that Apple's trying to walk. While it seems the company would like to keep everything about the device a complete secret, can't really do that and have developers test the thing. But they'll try. According to a report on the developer kit rollout from Upload VR, applications will be reviewed and priority will be given to applicants creating an app that takes advantage of visionOS features and capabilities, according to Apple's developer site. Developers need to detail the development skills of their team and existing apps. Successful applicants will get help setting up the device, as well as check-ins with Apple experts for UI design and development guidance, and help refining the app. As for the privacy bit, it is no joke. Part of the agreement between Apple and would-be dev kit recipients reads, "You agree that all access to, usage of, and storage use of the developer kit will be in a private, secure workspace accessible only by you and your authorized developers, for example, fully enclosed with solid doors, floors, walls, and ceiling, and locks that can be engaged when the developer kit is in use. You must ensure that unauthorized persons, including any family, friends, roommates, or household employees, do not access, view, handle, or use the developer kit. When in use, the developer kit should be in your positive control on your person or within your direct line of sight at all times. You must ensure the developer kit is passcode protected. Never leave the developer kit unattended." And hey, have fun. macOS Ken, brought to you by me, and sponsored by BetterHelp. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/macOSken. This show is also sponsored by Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code macOSken50 at factormeals.com/macOSken50 for 50% off. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macOSken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.